Welcome everyone to the discussion of curbside food scrap collection in Prince George's County's municipalities. I'm Martha Ainsworth, Chair of the Prince George's County Sierra Club Zero Waste Team. And this discussion is co-sponsored with Sustainable Maryland.
Hi, everybody. I'm Janice Uphelt, member of the Zero Waste Team. And Martha and I will be your moderators for today's discussion.
Now, food scrap composting is a critical strategy for reducing landfill methane emissions that contribute to climate change and for conserving landfill space. It can also save taxpayers money. About a quarter of the county's population lives in a municipality, but fewer than half of the municipalities have any sort of municipal program involving collection and diversion of food scraps. So last December, we sponsored a roundtable about 3 options for food scrap composting for the county's municipalities: backyard composting, drop-off collection, and curbside composting. We also learned from providers of composting services, including the county's food scrap composting facility in Upper Marlboro, Compost Crew, and a vendor for backyard composting. So for those of you who missed that roundtable last fall, we'll be sharing the link to the YouTube recording at the end of this event.
The county now is expanding curbside food scrap collection in unincorporated areas, but only a handful of municipalities have adopted curbside collection. Today, you'll learn more about experience with curbside collection in 3 Prince George's County municipalities. And you'll learn about the programs, the educational component, costs and benefits, participation rates, waste diversion, and lessons learned. And here's how the session will unfold. After a brief review of the benefits of composting, we'll turn to the panel experts involved in curbside food scrap collection in Hyattsville, University Park, and Bowie. After these presentations, we'll open the floor to questions and comments. One important thing is this, or 2 actually, this discussion is being recorded. If you have a question for the panelists, put your name and the question in the Q&A field and to whom the question is addressed. And please be sure to put your questions in the Q&A field and not in the chat. And that will let us access them quickly. The chat can be used to contact the technician, Gary Young, share information, and to comment.
Thanks, Janice. Before we hear from the panelists, I want to underscore why we should care about composting food scraps. First, it diverts waste from the landfill and creates a valuable soil amendment. In 2014 to 15, Gary, if you could share that pie chart for me, thank you. About 31% of residential waste left at the Brown Station Road landfill was compostable. That's about 63,800 tons annually. Now, compostable waste includes vegetative food, non-vegetative food, compostable paper, leaves, grass, and brush. Composting conserves resources and creates a valuable soil amendment, compost that nurtures the soil. The second reason is that composting food scraps can save money. Last October, the landfill tipping fee increased from $59 to $70 a ton. The organics composting facility in Upper Marlboro's tipping fee is only $45 a ton, about a third less than at the landfill. So every ton diverted from the landfill to the composting facility saves the municipality $25 a ton in tipping fees. If food scraps can be collected at the same time as yard waste, there'll be less residual trash, and there could be savings in terms of trash collection and transport. Finally, diverting scraps from the landfill fights climate change. The anaerobic, that's without oxygen, decomposition of organic material in the landfill produces methane, which is an extremely potent greenhouse gas. To give you an idea, over a 20-year time frame, methane has a global warming potential about 85 times greater carbon dioxide. The Prince George's Climate Action Plan recommends expanding food scrap composting countywide, no surprise, but that objective can't be achieved without the participation of municipalities, home to a quarter of the county's population. So we hope that this discussion of curbside food scrap collection will inspire more municipalities to realize the benefits.
Thanks, Martha, for that background. And now I am pleased to introduce the first panelist, Lesley Riddle, Hyattsville's Director of Public Works for the past 9 years. Lesley is a certified professional horticulturist in erosion and sediment control and is recognized by the International Society of Arboriculture as a certified arborist. She holds a bachelor's in business, a master's in environmental studies, and has completed graduate studies in sustainable landscape design. Welcome, Lesley.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you, Martha, and everybody, and my esteemed panelists from University Park in Bowie. Excuse me for my inept ability on Zoom. I am going to try to share my screen. Ashleigh also admitted that she, so I'm going to share my screen, and probably after I talk a little bit, a little video that we have done in the city. So look at me, wow, I think I'm there. Okay, so our compost program. We began a volunteer program approximately, probably 6 or 7 years ago, 2015, as a volunteer program. And we had about 100 people to start the program. And about 4 or 5 years later, we decided to push that program for food scraps citywide. Currently, and that was, I believe in 2019 that happened. We had about 400 homes in the initial program, and now out of 2,000 homes, we have about a 75% participation rate. So that's good things that numbers give you where we're kind of at. We divert 20 tons of food scraps out of the regular trash stream every week, which we'd like to increase that certainly. And this program has been pretty successful, I think, across the board with our residents. And again, I will go back to that other slide so that I can show you that video, because that was a public service announcement that we did in 2019 to really bolster people diverting food scraps for composting. We also have added compost stations for our multifamily folks in multifamily dwellings. There are 5 stations currently throughout Hyattsville in various areas closer to our multifamily dwellings. So they have the capacity to compost as well. I will say that initially we had some problem with it, the compost having some trash in it, so we couldn't actually use it. That's getting much better over the past year or so, where those stations are all food scraps. So we're very excited about that. The other thing that we did recently, we had a solid waste study, and what we found is that offering toters, rolling toters for yard waste and food scraps, which the county wonderfully lets us commingle those, will be, I think, a significant investment, but also will encourage all of our residents, all of our 2,000 single family homes to put food scraps with their yard waste, so that we're even diverting more things out of the regular trash stream and saving money as far as the tipping fees. And I believe Martha had addressed that as well. I just want to say, our folks love us. We do good work. And I think I will probably go back. Here's my contact information. Lesley Riddle, my cell phone number if you have any questions. I'm going to try to go back to this slide and play this cute video. I have to apologize for my silliness, but this is me in the video, if I can get this going. The City of Hyattsville is always in search of ways in which we can improve and expand some of our environmentally friendly practices. One of the ways that we've accomplished this is by expanding our existing composting program and composting curbside services. Curbside composting pickup makes things easier than ever, and you can even include items like bones and soiled pizza boxes that you can't typically compost in your backyard bin. Residents can set out their curbside composting in a variety of containers. Whatever style of container you choose to use, it should have a sealed lid to prevent animals from accessing it, and not be larger than 13 gallons. And if you use collection bags, they need to be compostable. When food waste is thrown out with your regular garbage, it ends up in a landfill and gets buried between layers of plastic and other materials where it can't biodegrade the way it naturally would. People are always curious where their compost ends up after it gets picked up. Well, our crews collect and deliver the compost to the Prince George's County Organics Composting Facility, where it is produced into a material called leaf grow gold that is used for planting and gardening. You know, it's really kind of cool when you think about it. Not only does composting help to reduce what goes into our landfills, but it is being recycled locally and made into a material that helps things grow. So thank you. That's all I have for now, and certainly will entertain questions when we are asked. Thanks, Martha. Thanks, Janice.
Thanks very much, Lesley. Our next panelist is Beall, Director of Public Works for the town of University Park. And it's a position he's held since 2008. Prior to his current position, he worked for 14 years for Prudential Financial Services and 5 years in logistics with Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Welcome, Mickey.
Good evening, everyone. I guess I'm not sure whether it's evening or afternoon, but welcome. Thank you for having me. As Martha said, I've been the Public Works Director for 14 years. Our town is a small town for the city of Bowie. We're pretty much a neighborhood. We're a half a square mile, 923 homes, 2 churches and a school, and an elementary school. We don't have any commercial entities in town or commercial zoning. It's entirely residential. So our program is like a community program for one of the larger cities or for the county. I can't really take credit for the founding of our program. It was the idea of a town resident, and it was the initial operations of another town resident. Basically in 2011, our town had received a federal grant for an energy program. And as part of that grant, between the 2 of those residents, they figured out how to convince the federal government that there was an energy component to composting. And as was discussed, they used the methane angle at the landfill to have the government agree to allow them to start a composting pilot here in town. Basically, the approach to me was, would I consider supporting that? And my response was, it sounds like you're telling me I don't have to do any of the work and I don't have to pay for it. I guess I'm in. And that's how our program started. It was funded by a grant. It was operated by a third-party vendor, and the administration was also done by a third-party vendor. So in that first year, there was nothing for me to do other than observe and learn so that we could expand the program. We did do that in 2012, in January of 2012. So we've been operating, the Public Works Department has been operating the program here in town for the last 10 years. The original program was 50 households, as I said, with a third-party vendor, using buckets and countertop bins. Our program still operates that way, buckets and countertop bins. The town provides all the supplies. We've implemented an 8-week delivery, an 8-week delivery schedule where we'll deliver bags to households every 8 weeks. That was my innovation in order to not have to take thousands of custom orders for bags. But we do supply all of the materials they need. And in 2012, we expanded to 150 households, which was what I thought one staff member could do with one truck in one day. We left it open-ended and continued to just accept new participants as they applied. We didn't turn anyone away. And until 2 years ago in 2020, we did an expansion effort and put out a mass mailing to all a flyer to all the households, and actually saw a 30% increase in participation just in the next few months. At this point, we're at about 40% of all households in town, or actually we just exceeded 40% yesterday of the households in town are participating. And it's been a really good program. We haven't had issues with trash and other contaminants, primarily because we're providing the bags, so we don't get plastic bags and that sort of thing. But providing those bags is an expense, and providing the buckets, etc., is an expense. Our set out rate over the period of time has averaged about just under 70% from those participating. Our weights, when we first started the program, it was non-meat, non-dairy, because the facilities we were hauling to could not handle meat and dairy. We are now, when we did the expansion, we began including meat and dairy, but our weights were just over 8 pounds per household, which I understand is a fairly average number. The residents really enjoy it. We've had a lot of early adopters, and we just keep, taking new participants as they come. There's, I would say the use of buckets, there's a downfall in the use of buckets, which is they only have about a 5 or 6 year life expectancy because of ultraviolet light. They get brittle and break down. And so, that's something to consider when you're evaluating what kind of program you want to have. I would say for us, the biggest impact we had, or the biggest impact on our program, was when the county allowed us to begin hauling to their facility, because they began their pilot at that time. We were in dire straits at that point with a partner for hauling, and the county opened it up and allowed us to haul to their yard waste facility, and then eventually allowed us to commingle with our yard waste, which was really a game changer for the program, because it just took away a lot of the expense and the extra work from having a separate collection. As Lesley said, I'm here for the duration and welcome to answer questions at the end. But thank you for having me.
Thanks, Mickey. Our final speaker is Ashleigh Diaz, Bowie's sustainability planner. Ashleigh has a bachelor's in anthropology and a master's in marine affairs and policy from the University of Miami. She was a fellow at both NOAA Fisheries and then EPA headquarters, working on wetlands and the Trash-Free Waters program. She has been a Bowie's sustainability planner since 2017 and focuses on helping residents learn practical ways to become eco-friendly and sustainable. Welcome, Ashleigh.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm really happy to be here. Let me get my screen up for you all. And I will run you through the City of Bowie's food waste program. Okay, I'm assuming everyone can see that, right? We're good? Okay. Before we jump in, I just want to set the tone and show these images. They should resonate with most people here. We know that food waste breaking down in a landfill creates and emits greenhouse gases and contributes to different aspects of global warming and climate change. You can see from the image on the right that landfills are a significant source of methane, as Martha touched on as well. And according to EPA's food recovery hierarchy, sending food waste to a landfill is the least preferred and least sustainable method of dealing with it. So that's why we're here, to try to recover some of that food waste before it gets landfilled by composting and food scrap programs. So this is the program area for Bowie. So in pink is the participating neighborhoods, and they're listed there to the right. In blue is public works. So you can see there's a real good proximity thing going on with the neighborhoods involved and how close they are to public works. Also, 301 is basically just east of public works. So it's very easy for them to get right onto 301 and head south straight to the county facility where we go. So there are about 1,100 eligible households in this area, but we have currently we're at 242 households participating. We average about 4 to 5 pounds of food waste a week per home. I will say it was a bit more pre-COVID. It was about 5 to 5.5 pounds per home. The only thing that I can come up with, this is just my opinion and anecdotally, is that people are home more and they may be noticing the food going bad in their fridge and using it. Whereas before, you're at the office all week and you might come home and that bag of salad is wilted again, you know? So that's my only thought really on that. But we're still at about between 4 and 5 pounds a week per home participating. So in terms of the creation of our program, it launched as a pilot in early 2017, right before I started, and there were 85 participants. They really loved it. It went really well, so they decided to implement it. It's sometimes still referred to as a pilot in Bowie, but that's a bit of a misnomer. It is a program. It's just in that specified area. But as a pilot, it was only 4 of them, those neighborhoods. So they expanded it to 7 and implemented it. And we did a direct mail effort in 2018, right after I started, and we got up to around 150 homes. And then 2019, I just had a goal in my mind to at least get to 200 homes. So we did another direct mail effort. And from that, we got up to about the 240 households that we're at now. We've been holding steady, you know, through COVID at about that number. We also have over 50 homes on our wait list, homes that are in different areas of Bowie. So I let them know if and when we expand, you're first on the wait list to find out. So our kits that we use EcoSafe Zero Waste. They used that before I started. They're awesome. So I have continued with them. Here's an example of the kit over here to the right. An example from a resident. I think that's actually from my mom, that picture at the top. I don't know why she was getting rid of all of her oranges, but anyways, and here's a picture of our invoice, kind of what we do when we order from them. So we get the 6-gallon curbside caddies to put out each week. And then we get the 2.5-gallon kitchen caddies for everyday use. And then we get the compostable bags, and we give each resident 2 courtesy starter rolls. And at the same time, I either email or hand it to them when I see them, an FAQ handout and a what's accepted at curbside handout. And EcoSafe actually provides those for us. They just tailor it to Bowie. So they're really nice handouts. And then I have created a where to buy your compostable bags handout that I can provide residents with when they need it. So how it works is that a resident in the program area finds out about the program, typically online through our website, or I have a monthly e-newsletter where I reference it, the direct mail efforts, or I guess even perhaps just a neighbor telling them about it. So they contact me, I add them to the list. I send that list to Public Works, and then I go to Public Works and I create their little kit that you saw there, and then I deliver it to their home. And if they're home, a lot of the times we can chat and I can answer questions and things like that. From there, Public Works does the rest of the work. So it's one guy, one person, one staff in one pickup truck who does all the pickups, and they go on Wednesday morning, and he basically dumps them all into the truck. Again, it is in the compostable bag, so there isn't too much of a mess. We do have them tie off each compostable bag and put it in the larger caddy. So he's dumping that. And then he heads straight to the facility and, does his thing down there. And then I do the outreach and education campaigns through Twitter, the website, my e-newsletter. If I do recycling presentations in schools or at HOAs, I often reference this program. So from that perspective, I do that. And here's an example here at the bottom of the handout that we give residents when they join. So a little bit of data and trends for you. We have diverted about 75 tons from the landfill, which is great. We have about a 25% participation rate. So we're looking to expand this upcoming fiscal year, but it's not necessarily an expansion. We want to do basically another call for participants in the program area, because if we can get about another 100, Public Works feels like they'll really be at their capacity. They're already kind of there with the one staff, one truck setup and the amount of homes we have, but they're thinking there's room. He can handle about 100 more, but from there, in the following fiscal year, hopefully we would expand to another neighborhood. And there are a few different models we could take. It could be another neighborhood in that close proximity to the current program area and Public Works, or it could be a neighborhood in South Bowie that's also close to 301. We're looking at equity and access issues across the city, which is a big city. So that'll be part of our discussions coming up. Our dropout rate is essentially zero. It's almost zero. I did have one person drop out when I first started. She was on a fixed income and couldn't continue affording to purchase the compostable bags, but it's essentially zero because we don't see people dropping out other than that one incident. And in fact, when people move, I've had it happen twice where they gave it to the next person and the people who moved in just picked right up there. So that was really great. And we have won 2 awards referencing our program in 2018 from the Maryland Green Registry and in 2020 from Prince George's County from the Waste Diversion Awards. And we have not had any contamination issues, which is really awesome. So what's next for the city of Bowie? Of course, expansion, most likely starting with that, another direct mail effort, another call for participants in the current program area, and then looking to expand to more neighborhoods. We may need to rethink the current solid waste setup, which I will not comment on because that is a very contentious subject. If you don't know, Bowie has twice a week trash pickup. So I'll just leave it at that, but there may need to be some restructuring there to accommodate for more neighborhoods in terms of composting or even citywide composting. And if residents and council feel very strongly one way and that's not an option, we might need to consider drop-off sites then instead. So that'll be part of our conversation going forward also. And that's it. So I'm happy to take any questions. Yeah. Stop sharing.
Thank you, Ashleigh and Mickey and Lesley. Thanks very much. Let's open the floor for questions and comments, and please put your questions in the Q&A. I see there are already a few there, or you could raise your hand. Janet, we're going to start with some questions that came in when people registered. There are quite a few questions. Janice, what have we got?
Okay, these first few, like Martha said, were sent ahead of time. So first one is, what has been most challenging about launching food waste collection and composting? Everybody can answer. Anybody can answer.
So I would say certainly for us in Prince George's County, having the county be a proponent and supporter of, diverting waste out of, food scraps out of the waste stream has been good. I would say it's been challenging. And one of the reasons, and I'm sorry if folks couldn't see my video, but we did a public service announcement specifically to get more people involved, more of our residents involved in this food scrap initiative. And also, and I think that's the really getting people interested and energizing them so that this is a cool thing that they want to do. So I think that's at least for Hyattsville, that's been one of our challenges. We do have a really good participation rate, which is wonderful, but we have really good communications folks, and we have really good people who do all our videos, our videographers. So that's at least, for us, it's getting participation.
Anybody else have challenges? Mickey?
I would say for us, it was different because our program began before the county was involved in composting at the Western Branch facility. And so our biggest challenge was having a partner to haul to. We started hauling to a local farm, Eco City Farm. But once we expanded the program, after the first expansion, they weren't able to continue to take all of what we had. And so we had to find another partner. And that partnership ended up not working out. Fortunately, that was right at the time when the county began their program at the Western Branch. And so we were able to transition to the county.
Okay, Ashleigh, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, just the education and outreach component of it is always a struggle. I mean, getting people tapped in and finding a way to get them the information. So if someone isn't reading the website or subscribed to the e-newsletter or something, and they just receive a postcard, there's no link there for them to want to join. So I think that's why we do have a bit of a lower participation rate. It definitely could be better. So I think that linking for residents is definitely a struggle.
Well, that leads right into our second question. What communications channels do you use to increase community-wide participation?
Ashleigh, I think you should go first.
Thanks. Well, I have a Twitter account for Green Bowie. So I can create graphics and tweets related to that, and I can pass it on to the main city account. And then they do like Facebook and other things, and we can create videos. And then I have my newsletter. So we do have quite a few mediums, but we also have like 60,000 residents. So getting people to subscribe to these things or follow these things is kind of a challenge, but we're trying to reach out even more on some of the newer platforms like Instagram and things. So it's evolving.
Lesley, if you don't mind, I'll speak next. I guess I seem to be in the middle of the two of you right on through. I think for University Park, communications is the ongoing most significant issue, because I don't have as a small town, I don't have other administrative staff in my department. What I do is I provide a weekly email to the participants, letting them know this, often it's an informational email, either tips on issues that have come up in years past, just a reminder how to do things, what if my bucket freezes shut, things like that. But I also use it as a way to communicate special events or other things on holiday schedules, things like that. But I would say the most successful thing that we've done was the 2020 expansion flyer that we sent out all through town, because we increased our participation by about 80 households in about 4 months, which was, a 30-some% increase to just, the beginning of the year. So communications is difficult and a challenge for us.
I think Lesley had something she wanted to say too, right?
Yes, of course. I always have something to say. I'm sorry. So we use Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all the digital communication tools. We use flyers. We use our staff that talk to our residents consistently. I'm in the community all the time. We do have 20,000 residents and we are growing very quickly. That's fortunate and unfortunate. But I think there's many means, and you're pounding the feet on the pavement and talking to people is a good way too. And I think we have a very creative communications department and an excellent manager of communications. So it's always a challenge, but I think there are ways and means if you're willing to do them.
Okay, the last question I have in front of me here is, can multifamily unit residents participate? And if so, how?
I'll go first, I guess.
Okay.
So that's why we put out additional stations that so our multifamily units could participate. We actually only do curbside pickup at our single family homes. Part of the reason we did a trash study was to see going forward what that including multifamily homes, what would that look like both financially. But we did these additional stations throughout the city. Again, there are 5 locations, soon to be 2 more, so that multifamily dwellings could have that service for food scrap pickup.
Thank you. Anybody else have a comment on that? Multifamily units? No, okay. I think Martha has a couple questions too, so.
Yes, you spoke, several of you spoke about contamination issues. So what are the biggest contamination issues that you find in the program? And how have you dealt with them?
Okay, I have a big mouth, and I know Ashleigh says they have a really good contamination rate, which bravo for you. That's really tough. We see most of our contamination in 2 venues, and one is in the stations for multifamily homes. I think with additional public service announcements to go out and letting the public know, putting information at those drop-off sites, we were having contamination for a while, and that I think basically has settled out. The other place we see contamination, specifically not so much with food scraps, but with recycling, is in our big belly units, which are those communicate with me all the time, those lovely things. We've had some contamination there, but with food scraps, with the single family homes, folks are really good. The contamination rate, I would say we're kind of along with Ashleigh and Bowie, and I'm sure with Mickey that it's really quite good.
Yeah, I would just add that I know that I believe all 3 programs are volunteer programs, and I think that is a significant contributing factor to contamination being low, because there are people who are really interested in doing it. And so, at least for University Park, our program is voluntary, and so the people who are doing it have requested to do it, and so they're conscientious and they have a reason why they're doing it. And so we have not, in 11 years, we haven't had a contamination issue to my knowledge.
Anything else, Ashleigh?
No, I just agree that it being opt-in, residents are interested and typically know how to do it. And I think, yeah, same thing, no issues, knock on wood.
One more question before we go to the Q&A queue. A lot of the people who submitted questions ahead of time wanted about the costs and what the costs are. Are you saving money? Is it very costly? What can you tell us about that? Are you breaking even?
I would say initially with the volunteer program, and I know Mickey mentioned this, I think Ashleigh, I think the folks pay for their composting bags, but we invested a small amount of money in the pilot program, the volunteer program, before we offered that volunteer program or the food scraps citywide. The cost was minimal. It really wasn't all that much. I think to do something like this, particularly when you have volunteers who are wanting to do it, it's a win-win, and the cost was pretty minimal. I did talk about us now providing rolling toters for food scraps and yard waste citywide. That is going to be a significant investment for the city, which is in our FY23 budget of about $200,000.
I would agree. The startup is not a terribly significant cost because you're able to collect it, at least in Prince George's County, we're able to collect it with our yard waste. So it's a collection we're already doing. It's not a separate function. We weren't able to do that for years, so there is a cost if you're having to do a separate collection. For the town, it sounds like we're unique in that we're still providing all supplies. So for 370 households, we're spending about $5,000 a year on compostable bags, which we provide, as I indicated before, every 8 weeks.
Ashleigh.
Yeah, it's pretty minimal in Bowie, just getting the kits and the compostable bags. And because it's one person, it's pretty minimal. I think where there could be an issue is that I think our public works guys make a lot of trips with the twice a week trash pickup and recycling and yard waste and this. So that's one of those, it's very contentious in the city of Bowie, but I think there's room for it to be more efficient in that arena.
So they're not, in Bowie, they're not mixing their yard waste with the food waste yet, is that right?
No, because then we would have to rethink our bins and kind of model, yeah.
And one of the questions in the Q&A was about the frequency of food scrap collection. Is yours once a week, Ashleigh and Mickey?
Yes.
Lesley, did you say once every other week?
Nope, once a week. The video says twice a week. That was when it was a pilot program still. It's once a week. It's every Monday.
Okay, great. Let me just pull one more question up. Did you have to change? Okay, wait a minute. Let me just go down here. What kinds of bags does, okay, this is from Donald too. What kinds of bags does University Park provide to participating residents? And are they made of plastic?
No, so our vendor is BioBag USA. They have a particular product that comes in what they call a retail box. So we provide a box of 25 bags every 8 weeks. And what I'll do is I'll send an email out the week before where people, if they want, and I'll give them the date of the next delivery and give folks an opt-out of delivery if they don't actually need more bags. But we do that because otherwise you're trying to keep track of 370 different households when they want bags thousands of times a year. So that's what I've done in order to, since we're still providing those supplies, in order to minimize the number of times that we have to provide that service.
Any of the others? I have to say that I am just about to start getting, I'm in an unincorporated area on the first collection. I'm in an expansion of the Curbside program is next Monday, but I have been filling up this toter since April 1st when I got it. So I'm familiar with the bio bags. I went and bought myself some at Mom's, but when I was shopping over at Giant, I saw the produce bags were also green. They look very similar to the bio bags. And I'm just wondering if anyone's, I mean, Mickey, you were saying you provide all the bags, so you have control over that, but I'm just wondering whether in Bowie or Hyattsville, you have the problem that people are taking produce bags from the grocery store and using them instead of something that's really biodegradable.
Well, I mean, it certainly could happen. Now that you say that, they do look really similar, but I haven't heard of it happening. So just fingers crossed.
Any problems, Lesley? Or?
I have not heard any issues with those types of bags. And the county's pretty stringent about, contamination issues. So none as of yet.
Janice, you want to go for the next couple questions?
I was just trying to figure out which ones we were. this is a question for all speakers. I don't think you asked this one yet. Do you have any idea how many residents do backyard composting versus curbside pickup? I mean, or maybe a general idea.
I'll say for me, I don't. We've had a few people who have opted out of our program because they want to do backyard composting and they want to have it available at home because the county doesn't, you know, they don't deliver compost back to the residents. So we have had a few people who've indicated they would rather do their own backyard composting.
Okay.
Thank you. So we also sell backyard composting bins for $20. And I think as of our last State of the Environment report last fall, I think we've sold about 6,000. So it doesn't count everyone. I'm sure there are people who don't use our option, but going off of that number, we have at least 6,000 who have purchased our backyard composting bin.
So I would say, just based on my general knowledge, you know, working with some of the garden clubs and the horticultural club and a general sense of Hyattsville, I would say there is a good probably 10% of our residents who actually do backyard compost, both passive, which is more, I do passive composting, and some folks do hot composting. So yeah, we've got a good number of our residents who actually do that.
Okay. I think it's my turn, right, Martha?
Go ahead.
Okay. Panelists mentioned the county accepts food scraps to be commingled with yard waste. We currently pick up yard waste curbside. Can we allow residents to leave out food scraps, or are there any limitations on commingling?
So I would say the county has now, Prince George's County has rolled out their commingled program, and Martha says she's been saving it for a long time. So if you are in an unincorporated area of the county, yes, you can do that. If you are in a municipality, and I'm making an assumption here, that does not do composting, at least in Prince George's County, I think you can probably put food scraps with your yard waste. But I think often checking with your municipality is probably a good thing. And I'm making an assumption there. Mickey, what's your thoughts, Ashleigh?
I would agree. You might be able to get away with it. It might not make friends with your public works department if they're not expecting that. But you know, the county is treating them as the same product for the purposes of their processing. So.
Yeah, I would say also, sorry, Ashleigh, if your city does recycling and or yard waste, I would ask whether that's appropriate, because we don't do our recycling pickup. The county does ours, but we do all our yard waste, food scrap, and solid waste pickup.
Lesley, I was actually wondering, you probably said this, so I apologize if I missed it. What size are your toters?
So we offer 3 sizes of toters. They're the smaller toters, which I think are 30, and then a larger toter, and then a 90-gallon toter. The food scrap and yard waste pickup will be 90, the green toters that we're going to be purchasing in July.
Awesome, thank you.
Let's see. This one is for Ashleigh. What types of home composting bins do you sell, and at what price? Did you answer that already? I'm not sure.
I didn't give a lot of detail on it. We just have one model. It's actually really big. Like a lot of times people can't even fit it in their vehicle because it's larger at the bottom. You know, it goes right into the ground. You sort of hammer it into the ground. It has vents on it. It has a lid that twists shut. So it's really nice, very sturdy and durable. We never really get complaints or issues. And we sell them for $20, and each resident can purchase up to 2. So just bring in your proof of residency.
Okay. Martha, do you have more?
Yes. Would you, there's a question here from Lisa Robles. Would you folks accept using newspaper as a liner for the bins in your municipalities?
I'll say absolutely. There's, if you're using a yard waste container, one of the things that I would prefer to move away from the bucket system, but as Lesley shared, you're talking about $60 or $70 a container for a wheeled cart, perhaps more. So I would prefer that. But for folks who are using or putting out yard waste in a container, a wheeled container, the newspapers absorb a lot of the the fluids and the moisture. So yes, it's fine to put newspaper in.
Anyone else? I point out Denise Curry's here from the county, and she has put in the chat that one's not allowed to put food waste for the unincorporated areas at the curb outside the organics cart. It has to be in the cart. But this is about the county's unincorporated areas program. One more question.
One other comment, Gary Young, our technical person, has in the chat, there has a link to Lesley's video. If you scroll up, it's up there somewhere.
And one anonymous attendee asked which municipalities pick up their residents' materials with their own city crews. Are there third local party collection companies? I believe that all three of you have your own crews. Is that right?
That is correct.
Right. A number of the municipalities have haulers for the recycling yard waste, and just a contract with a hauler. Some of them are the same haulers as the county uses. So I would imagine that would be, I don't know if anyone else here wants to raise their hand and knows the answer to this, but I would imagine it's possible to negotiate something with them. Aha, Mayor Woyan, thank you. College Park will be hauling it. Congratulations on launching your curbside program.
Great.
So
Let's see.
just see who else.
I think we already, or maybe we didn't, but there was one question about the pros versus cons between curbside or at-home composting. Does anybody have any good thoughts about that, or even bad thoughts, really? I guess it's a personal decision, right?
Ashleigh, you all sponsor both. What do you see the pros and cons of curbside versus backyard?
Sorry, a dog came in if you just heard that. No, we were talking about that before. I've never actually really had a discussion with a resident about that and broken down like either or. I think it's just a personal preference. There are people who are very passionate about their backyard composting, and through the Green Team, we've done a lot of workshops with it, and everyone's really proud of their systems. So I think there's a dedicated group of folks there. For the food waste, it's kind of easy to participate in if it's in your area. I mean, if you take my parents, for example, they actually live in the program area. They're not home as much anymore, so they don't have to worry about it. But if they are home and they have things that they can add and participate, they get to, feel good about participating that week, but there's not as much really needed from them. So I guess it just depends, personal preference.
John Teasdale has his hand up. Gary, can we unmute him to let him ask his question?
As far as the question of backyard composting versus curbside pickup, my preference would always be for backyard composting, in the sense that doesn't require the energy input to having to go around and pick up compost and haul it around the county and whatever. So I think ultimately that would be the preferable thing if everybody would just do their own, handle their own food scraps in their own yard. Of course, doing it in your own yard, you can't do as complete composting as the county can. So I think that may be the downside to backyard composting, is it's hard to just get the temperature up as high as and do as complete a job as the county can. So that's my 2 cents.
What about you can actually put meat in the curbside, right? But you can't.
Yes,
can't do
that's
that in
right
the
too.
backyard. Yeah. Okay, Brenda Platt has a comment.
Yeah, and I'm unmuted now. Thank you.
Thank you,
I'll just say I've been measuring my food scraps fastidiously for a couple of years now, and I home compost, and we're lucky enough, I'm in actually Tacoma Park next door, so we have curbside collection. And I would say 74% of the food scraps that my family of 4 generates, I'm able to compost at home. And that does not include meat and bones and, cooked food and science projects growing in my fridge. So, but it's really nice to have both. I think the benefit, I put in the link to the guide the Institute for Local Self-Reliance did on home composting programs for local government. And the benefit of having a home composting program combined with curbside is that once you get a household exercising that muscle and doing that, as long as that household is doing it, you don't have to collect that 74% of that heavy food scraps into the future. So it's savings. We estimated that depending on tipping fees, for every 10,000 homes home composting, you could save, $70,000 to $250,000, depending on the tip fees in your community. So it's substantial, and that's cumulative every year. And then I think the other thing, our towns are so good about collecting fall leaves. The vacuum trucks come around. I think one of the reasons our trees in the Mid-Atlantic area are so stressed, not the only reason, but we're removing that organic matter from our backyard. So the other benefit of home composting is that, we're keeping those nutrients cycling within our own, where they're generated in those own backyards. So I think home composting is really important, as you can tell. Thank you for the time.
Yes, it looks like, Maddie, did you have something to say? And then Lesley, we're going to have to wrap this up in a minute because we're up against our time limit, but go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. No, I am one of those people that has curbside pickup. So, and I love it, but I also know how important it is to have, composting in your backyard, because one of the things that, for people like us that love to do planting is that we actually have to go out and find compost to use, right? Whereas if you have it in your backyard, it's there, it's simple. One of the things that I've always thought that was interesting is we're trying to reduce emissions, right? And yet here we have a truck going out to pick up our composting. So it's kind of an interesting twist, but I mean, obviously the city will continue to, and we hope to eventually expand. But it's kind of has a little twist there. So that's pretty much it. So you can mute me again.
Thank you. Thank you. Lesley?
So just one quick comment on backyard composting versus food scrap. The only thing to, I think, generally remember is not everybody has a backyard. Specifically in Hyattsville, we'll have lots of multifamily dwellings, and we want to provide that service to folks, the food scraps for service to everyone. So thank you.
Very good.
Great. Let's see, on the screen, you should see some resources, which will be sent to people who have registered after the webinar here. And it includes websites on food scrap options and short videos on the county's organic composting facility and how to compost. And then I believe we have another slide with contacts for the panelists and the link to the YouTube of last December's one event, which also covered backyard and drop-off compost.
So our time is coming to a close, so we hope the webinars help to connect leaders and residents across the municipalities about curbside food scrap collection as one of several ways of diverting food from the landfill and reducing greenhouse gas emissions and maybe even saving money. We'd like to thank the 3 panelists. Thank you for their great presentations, and all of the participants for tuning in. Special thanks to Gary Young, who is working hard behind the scenes to keep up our time. We're aiming to reach our greenhouse gas emission reduction goals, and we can't do it without the municipalities. And we thank all of you for your interest, and stay safe.